So here's an update on my situation with Tomlinson and family and Johnny Langham. Again, not something I really wanted to have to do. I naively thought Tomlinson would perhaps let it go and finish and just leave it. But of course I was naive and he didn't. And so a few weeks ago I got a enforcement notice on the High Court judgment that I owed him some costs. And as I've said before on videos, he comes out with all of this bullshit about it shows we won, it's proven we won and we were right. Complete load of crap. You only got to read the documents on AskTomo.com and you'll see that he dropped the case and I dropped the case, the defence case after, and it was simply a judge's order of costs because I was only allowed to charge £19 an hour and his solicitor could charge £500 an hour. So there was a complete disparity, and sure enough, I had the judge order that I owed him, which is very perverse in the bigger picture of things, £4,600. I didn't hear anything about it. His scumbag solicitor messaged me saying, "Are you going to pay it?" I'm like, "No." "What about the company?" I'm like, "The company never traded." "Well, how can you say that? There's a contract with my client." "Well, yeah, your client never paid me, so it never traded." Anyway, I get this enforcement notice through indicating that he's not leaving it. And sure enough, last week I had bailiffs on my door. And like I said, there's something quite perverse, to me at least, in this, that Tomlinson never paid me a penny for all the work I did. Not a penny. Owed me $5,000, which I reduced to $4,000 because realistically I'd done 80% of the work when it all went wrong. And then I end up owing him £4,600 for costs. Something quite screwed up in that. So, bailiff comes, they're doing their job. After a bit of a heated exchange, and him clamping one of Gabby's cars, I now have to pay via the High Court £100 a month to that order, which is now £5,200 after costs. Now, like I said, something quite perverse in that. I got to pay the geezer £100 a month for costs when he initially took me and the British Masters to court over a leaflet and defamation of character when he never actually paid me a single penny. And you think to yourself, this is pretty screwed up. It gives me some pleasure in knowing that the bailiffs will collect their money first, so he's not going to get a penny for a while. But it's something quite wrong. Now, when I found out that he was continuing to enforce the order, I thought, you know what? I regret finishing my defence claim to him. Why did I finish the defence claim? Because his scumbag of a solicitor and Tomlinson is an equally bigger scumbag as his solicitor, really. They're both not related, but peas of the same out the same pod. Put all of this to the High Court. Even the judge that heard the embarrassing for them case on the 15th of June last year suggested it need to go to the small claims track of the High Court. But of course, Tomlinson, his solicitor, rejected it going to the small claims side of the High Court. And then I was informed it's going to cost me up to £2,000 to get it to the small claims track of the High Court. And I'm only countering for less than £10,000, and I've got to spend £2,000 just to get it into the small claims track. And you know what? After he dropped his defamation claim because his solicitor told him he's going to need £40,000 plus to go forward because of the Ask Tomo site that he hates because it tells the truth. After he then dropped the copyright case which, remember, on the judge on the 15th of June said, can you actually tell me what you're claiming copyright for? And his solicitor couldn't answer. Embarrassing. I was even embarrassed for them. He's dropped all of that. He's screwed over the Sullivan brothers and Lee Sullivan for $8,500 and lied through his teeth about that as well. So he's dropped everything, but my defence claim still stands. But then I've got to pay more money to get it, because they're being idiots as they are, into the small claims to have it heard quicker without all of the solicitor crap and whatever. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to drop it. But now nobody told me at the time, because when he dropped his case, nobody said to me as a litigant in person, you can claim your costs against him. Quite rightly. So then the next thing, I get a claim of costs from Tomlinson and his solicitor for £7,000 something for the time fighting the defence claim that I put only against him, because he came after me for, one was up to £250,000 and one was for £50,000. Remember, all of this because the man didn't want to pay me £5,000 for the work that I'd done and got a contract to do all of this for that. So I dropped it, and I get a claim, expenses claim through for costs, which I didn't know would happen, if I'm honest. And then the judge quite rightly said, well, put your time in that you put into it. Cut a long story short, £4,600 to Tomlinson. And again, I'm probably naive in thinking he was going to drop it, but I have had the pleasure of not having to think about the twat for months, good few months, which has been great. Not have to check what lies he's saying, not have to do anything. And I hear little bits, and I heard that he insinuated that because his computer kept throwing him off the live shows, and I'm the only, he didn't say me by name, but only one other person's ever accessed his computer, I'll say no more, making it look like I'd put something on his computer. I mean, the guy's just a Fruit Loop, really. Anyway, so that's that. So bailiffs on my doorstep last week, which nobody wants. And I've got to pay the geezer £100 a month now for 52 months when he's never paid me a penny. And when I got this enforcement notice through, I thought, you know what? I do regret dropping the case, but I like things more simple. So the day after, a couple of days after I got this enforcement notice, thinking, well, he's not dropped it, I went, now this is something he probably won't talk about because he doesn't want to talk about it. And bear in mind, this is a man that prior to me dropping the case, I think was getting very worried that the evidence I'd got shows he never paid me, show he should pay me, etc. And very publicly started, I don't own the race anymore. His equally inept son now owns Who Dares Wins Race, the company and everything. Annette owns all of the pigeons, and she only ever has done. So he was doing a thing to where I don't own any assets. So he was doing all of that before I dropped the case. Anyway, I decided to get. I thought, you know what? I'm not. This is wrong that I owe the man now money for costs when he never paid me. So I heard on his show that he never mentioned this. But I've gone and put some more claims in. But I'll come back to that in a minute. The other thing I've been waiting to deal with is Johnny Langham. Johnny Langham accusing me, calling me a child porn peddler. One of the lowest of the lows. I shouldn't be surprised by this stuff anymore because these people are lower than low. I went to the regional meeting of the RPRA. They said he needed to apologise, withdraw his claims within 30 days, if not, he'd be suspended for 2 years. Hands up, like I said on Saturday, I never wanted the man to be suspended. I didn't want to see the man and his wife not be able to raise pigeons. That's not it. That wasn't ever popular. I've never met the man. How would I want that to happen? I've never met the man. But he refused to apologise. He initially said he was going to apologise before it went official with the RPRA, and then, of course, changed his mind. Why did he change his mind? Well, I would assume that Tomlinson got his poisonous, cancerous views and opinions into him, and unfortunately for Johnny Langham, he listens to his mate Tomlinson way too much. Cut a long story short, went to the committee, the main RPRA committee appeal on Saturday, and before I got all the documents through, and I was surprised to see, guess who's representing Johnny Langham at the RPRA hearing? Mr. Gary Tomlinson. Once again, the man can't stay away, has to get involved in everything. And what's perverse about this is that, one, he's the original perpetuator of all this horrible, vile, disgusting rumours about me. And he actually bought, in the meeting, in the hearing, he bought a copy of my book, and with the paragraph highlighted, what they took out of complete context, me talking about girls, whatever, you can see it all on there before. Completely false. And bear in mind, the RPRA regionally, locally, had said, this is disgusting and out of order, completely goes against Rule 71 on gentlemanly conduct, etc. On Saturday, it kind of came the Gary Tomlinson show again, as it always seems to do with this idiot. So he's now representing Johnny Langham and his wife. And he apparently is allowed to do it. He insists it's not a pigeon issue. He reads the paragraph out, the sentence of the paragraph, and that's his defence. Cut long story short, I lost the case. And the RPRA said it was a unanimous decision of the appeals committee that the appeal be allowed, and the committee fined for the appellant, Mr. and Mrs. J&J Langham. The committee has found for J&J Langham on the grounds that under the provision of Rule RPRA 71, this case is not relevant. So according to the RPRA, somebody, and bearing in mind, last year there was found out to be a convicted child rapist and paedophile infiltrated the sport. So somebody calling me a child porn peddler in a social media pigeon group network context, it's not relevant. I'd like to ask everybody, including them 11 council members, how they'd feel about it. How would they feel about somebody spreading these vile and horrible rumours? And remember, I know categorically Tomlinson is behind all this, because that's the Tomlinson thing. Let's distract from the facts at hand, and let's start talking crap about other people that we don't like and that have the balls to stand up to us. Lost the case, nothing I can do. As again, never wanted the man to never raise pigeons. All I want is an apology for the completely unfounded, untruth, horrible rumours that unfortunately he'd listened to his friend Gary Tomlinson. So, where are we at? Well, I'm sure Tomlinson would have been going back up the M1 motorway, happy, thinking he's the new great Perry Mason of the pigeon world. But if he gets his post at the same time as me, I got these on Saturday morning when I got back from the RPRA hearing, and he would have hopefully been greeted with the same. So I said, you know what, I regret giving the original defence case up and coming after the money he never paid me. So I now have 3 county court business cases in. One for £880 for the 7 pigeons that he never gave me, that ended up in his son being arrested, charged and convicted with assault by beating. Another one for the £4,000 he never paid me for the work I did, and another one for over £4,000 for the DVDs that I owned half of the profits to that he never gave me a penny on. And the great thing is, he can't apply £500 an hour solicitor's fees to this because it's in the county court business small claims money claim department of the court, and he can't go and pile on £500 an hour fees. A lot of people have said to me, why don't you drop it? In fact, a very well-respected person in the pigeons who I listened to when I initially made the decision to drop it and forget about it back in the High Court would say, why don't you continue to do it? I actually listened to some of it, which is partly what made my decision to drop the case in the High Court. But this is different. Yes, it cost me £400 and some odd to put these in. But I've got all the evidence. The evidence that he was very worried about because he was transferring all his assets into his son's name, company name and wife's name. And the fact still remains is he cannot prove that he ever paid me, because he didn't. So in the interests of him making it sound like he won and he was in the right, the man's never paid me a penny for the work I did. The man never gave me the 7 racing pigeons that I was entitled to, or my son was entitled to, and the man never gave me a penny apart from the Blackpool show of a single amount of money that he's earned out of the DVDs that I co-produced and put a lot of work into. So 3 court claims are gone back into him, sum total of about £9,000. I've got all the evidence from the High Court already. We'll see what crap he comes back with. But the great thing is, if he wants Aaron Wood or another solicitor to represent him with this and help him with this, he's got to pay for it himself, because the maximum costs he can pay charge are £80 for costs. And I think it's the right thing to do, and I think it addresses the issue that I perversely have got to pay him any money at all for when he never paid me a penny. The trouble with Gary, as I've said before, is his ego. He's got a massive ego, and he relies on bullying and intimidation, and he's not been able to do that with me so far. And I won't let it go. Maybe I should, but when he continues to do and say all of the things and spread these horrible rumours and continue, he won't drop it. I feel forced to, as he would say, do the right thing and prove who's telling the truth. So the County Court Business Centre now will decide that, and he's going to be damn hard pushed to find any evidence he can show that he ever paid me a penny for all of that work I did over 3 years ago. And the funny thing is with Tomlinson, he says he's a businessman. One breath he says he's just a simple miner. I'm not entirely sure, because the reality is he admitted himself on a video a few months ago that it's cost him, his family and his business dearly over the last 18 months or whatever. But I don't actually think he realises what it's cost him. His race is not full. Yes, there's lots more one-off races. They're not full either. But how much of him not being full would he have been full if he'd have actually decided to do the right thing, pay what he owed, and not have me telling people what an absolute scumbag, lying, compulsive liar the man is, and all of the other stuff that I've made sure people know about? Would that have happened? I don't know. He says that they're fighting for his copyright has cost him over 40,000 quid. All of this for £5,000 makes you think. What I do know now is that Tomo Jr. is taking over the race. Let's see where that ends. But I don't think he wants to admit, or he's bright enough to think how much this has hurt him. One of the problems that he probably doesn't understand is this. One, I've never had anything to lose, apart from the money it cost me to put these court things together. Two, I've got no real interest in making a name for myself in pigeons or business. Tomlinson completely relies on Who Dares Wins for his business and income. But I think the big thing he doesn't get is exactly how many enemies the man has made in the last 18 months. I think he's naive enough to think that his actions and completely screwing over, for instance, the Sullivan brothers, Liam and Ian Sullivan from the British Masters, I think he thinks naively they forgot that. Well, I know Lee relatively well, and I know for a fact that he is not the type of person to forget all of the lies, bullshit and everything else that Tomlinson did towards them and at me at the same time. The self-proclaimed master of racing pigeons, who's now got 3 DVDs. I heard he put out, somebody suggested his DVD and got a bunch of abuse. The tide has turned. Maurice O'Donnell in Ireland was intimidated, was threatened by his Tomlinson's cronies in Ireland. Maurice is not the type of person for that to affect him. He's got a lot of people that really don't like him. And how much has that affected him, his business? He'll say, this man's made my family's life a nightmare for the last 3 years. Well, actually, let me translate that. This man stood up to me, one of the very few people that stand up to his bully intimidation tactics over the last 3 years. That's what he really means. All I ever wanted was to be paid for the work that I did. So, 3 court cases, back in the small claims court. Let's see what happens. And in the meantime, let's see what he does now to try and make it look like he owns nothing and all of that stuff. Because let me tell you, the evidence I got that was all prepared for the High Court, it's all there, ready to go, sitting there. All I ever wanted was the money that I was owed. Money, actually, some of which he offered to pay me 3 years ago, but then backed out because his wife, once again, who's the real boss of everything, got involved. As I've said before, I look forward to the day where I don't have to think about this man, his horrible family, and anything to do with him ever again. That day's not come yet. It will do one day. And as I've also said before, I've got no problem with people having issues with what I have done in the past. But I have a major problem with people having issues with lies, horrible, disgusting rumours that I've mentioned previously being spread about me. I have major issues with people calling me a con man. Never conned anybody in my life and never will. The irony with it all is that, in my own personal opinion, Gary Tomlinson and his family are some of the biggest con men, despite the charity work that he keeps talking about, despite giving away tens of pairs of stock pigeons and all of this crap that he'll keep regurgitating and recycling. The reality is, actually, I think Gary Tomlinson and his family are the biggest con men in the sport in the UK. I think he is a real issue. He had the cheek to say that this is the 3rd time Lyford's brought somebody up before the RPRA. What he failed to say is, actually, yeah. And every single time, you, Tomlinson, were involved. So he can ride along thinking it's going to be the best thing ever and Rob's taking it to the next level and all of this stuff. But he's made far more enemies than I've ever made in the last 18 months out of this. And some people that I certainly wouldn't want to make enemies out of. All because of this. Like I say, just because somebody doesn't say something, I'm not one of them person, I'll say it. But just because some people don't say stuff doesn't mean they forgot. We'll see what happens. I still look forward to the day that I don't have to think, talk about, or even have this man or his horrible family enter my head. Like I said, that day has not happened yet. The great thing about this is this should be relatively quick and not be long drawn out like his solicitor Aaron Wood and he tried with the High Court cases and all of this stuff. Remember, the man took another one-off race to court, and because of personal situation and business situation, they settled, which I know for a fact they regret doing. He took two men and a company in a race to court about a leaflet, the design of a leaflet which he never paid for. And just when you think he can't go any lower, he starts spreading the most vile, horrible rumours about me being into all kinds of horrible, disgusting things in my past. Makes you think. We'll see. Catch you soon.